Alright, this is for my family. I play Golden Castle of Stromberg.
Oh no, it's the strongest card I've ever seen.
What?
Me too.
The original Duel Monsters anime, it's where it all started and where card balancing was completely non-existent. If you've ever seen, well, pretty much any season of DM, you know that some of the most absolutely absurd and broken beyond belief cards were used on the regular. It didn't matter which story arc it was, or whether the duelist was a villain, hero, or anti-hero. Overpowered cards were as abundant through DM as maple syrup and hockey teams are in Canada. And in this video, I'll be giving you my picks for the best of the best. These were the ones that left our jaw on the floor as we were in awe of their power. Now, just for the record, I'll be ranking these cards not just on sheer power, but on overall playability based on the Yu-Gi-Oh! DM era standards and how unbelievable the card effect was as well. In addition, I will only be considering cards that got an actual release for the physical trading card game, i.e. real life cards. And keep in mind, before you tear my list apart, this is just my personal opinion, so yours may differ. With all that out of the way, I'd like to welcome you to the top 10 most powerful cards from the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters anime, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Hierarchy. Number 10, the Seal of Orochilos. I'll be completely honest here, it's actually really hard to properly judge the power level of Orochilos in the context of this list. On one hand, it's one of the more fair and practical cards on the list, but if you judge the card on raw power, it's actually quite incredible. If you start with the basic, every monster you control gains 500 attack effect, Orochilos doesn't really seem like anything special. However, when you realize that it also grants you the ability to summon monsters in your spell and trap zones, then you start seeing the potential of the card. Also, I am inclined to mention that the Seal of Orochilos gives you the ability to take your opponent's soul just by beating them in a single duel. While this effect has no actual bearing on you winning or losing the duel itself, I did say that I would be ranking these cards by how powerful they are, not just how good they are in terms of an actual duel. Being able to steal your opponent's soul pretty much puts the Seal of the Orochilos in a league of its own. Number 9, Obelisk the Tormentor. I'm not gonna sugarcoat this. Obelisk anime effect is super inconsistent and kind of all over the place, especially if you watch both the dubbed and the sub versions of the Yu-Gi-Oh! DM anime, but if you put that aside, it's pretty obvious it's one heck of a boss monster and definitely worthy of being played by Seto Kaiba. Obelisk has incredibly high base stats of 4,000 attack and defense, which are some of the highest in the entire series, and it can also nuke all of your opponent's monsters by tributing 2 additional monsters. His summon cannot be negated in any way, and in the anime, he was nearly immune to all spells, traps, and monster effects except the Winged Dragon of Ra's monster effect for some reason. Obelisk also had an additional effect that would let the player tribute 2 monsters to have him have infinite attack points. Much like its appearance, it had tons of raw power and it was one of DM's best battlegrams, but the card was fairly linear in what it could do, and all of its effects required a very heavy investment. Number 8, Toon World. Just like another card that will appear later on this list, Toon World was a one-of-a-kind card created by Maximilian Pegasus that was never released to the general public. This could be because it was his personal favorite card and he wanted to keep it unique and special, or maybe he realized it was broken beyond belief and thought that it wouldn't be so good for balancing. The 1,000 life point activation cost may have been steep by Duelist Kingdom Arc standards back when Duelist only had 2,000 life points, but for what the card actually did, it was well worth it. For starters, it turned all monsters you summoned or controlled into Toon versions of that monster. Toon monsters could not just hide inside the Toon World book itself, thus were not able to be attacked at all, but Toon monsters could also arbitrarily dodge opponents' monster attacks declared on them even when they weren't inside the pages of the Toon World book. This actually makes hiding inside the book completely redundant, especially considering that the monsters did not need to be instructed to dodge attacks. Lastly, all Toon monsters could attack your opponent directly, so while your opponent was busy not attacking your monsters, you didn't even need to attack theirs to win the duel. Number 7, Ryuko. In the real-life physical card game, Ryuko basically gives any one of your monsters the ability to destroy an opponent's monster in battle by bridging the gap in their attack points. It cuts your opponent's monster's attack in half and gives your monster that lost attack value. It's kinda cute for what it does, but in the anime, it is much more lethal because rather than cutting your opponent's monster's attack in half, it instead cuts your opponent's life points in half. I don't really need to say this, but life points are obviously a far greater resource in Yu-Gi-Oh! And or Duel monsters, because once they run out, you obviously lose the duel. Ryuko also gives one of your monsters that lost life point value and attack points at the cost of not being able to declare an attack that turn. While having no battle phase may seem like a major downside, if you were to simply play this card in a burn-based strategy, it would be straight up unfair. Ryuko is not a once per turn effect, so cutting your opponent's life points in half twice in a single turn would be insanely powerful, as they would now be low enough for just a couple of random burn cards to finish them off, and using the battle phase, which burn decks already don't do very often to begin with, would be nothing more than an afterthought. I'm guessing that's the reason why this card was only used in a single episode in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters anime. Number 6, Crush Card Virus. This thing was bananas in the anime. Don't believe me? Ask Kaiba after Pegasus used his own card against him and destroyed every monster in his entire deck, which single-handedly won the duel by deck out. During the GX era, when Crush Card was released in the physical trading card game, we used to have a saying amongst competitive players. Every deck that wasn't specifically designed to survive Crush Card was going to lose to it, and the funny thing is, this is exactly how it worked in the anime too. In the show, Crush Card was significantly more powerful because not only did it destroy all monsters with 1500 or more attack your opponent had on their field or in their hand, but it also destroyed ones in the deck as well. This meant once you activated this bad boy, your opponent was basically never going to be able to put another high attack monster on the field for the remainder of the duel. In addition to this, many forget in the anime, Crush Card Virus also prevented your opponent from summoning any of the destroyed monsters back from the graveyard. This is why Seto Kaiba used Monster Reborn to revive Sagi the Dark Clown rather than picking something better. When a card is heavily nerfed for real life Yu-Gi-Oh! And it still gets banned, you know it's broken. Number 5, Divine Serpent. Yeah, come on now, you knew that this was going to make the list. Everyone knows that the Waking the Dragons arc was home to some of the most utterly ridiculous cards in the DM anime, and main antagonist Darts had one hell of a boss monster. While Divine Serpent Gaia did require a couple of other Orichalcos monsters to summon, it was definitely worth it. For one, Gaia didn't technically have to be drawn, as Orichalcos Shuneros let you summon it straight from the deck. When Gaia actually hit the field, it was on another planet in terms of raw power. First off, Divine Serpent Gaia had infinity attack and defense points. This immediately begs the question, why the hell a monster would even need that much attack power in the first place? But just as a little bit of icing on the cake, Gaia also had the ridiculously broken effect that stated, while you control this card, you cannot lose the duel. So basically your opponent has to go through this guy, and considering its monstrous stat line, if Gaia lands any successful direct attack or one on a monster in attack position, the card will literally inflict infinity damage and instantly end the duel. Number 4, Golden Castle of Stromberg. I actually feel pretty confident in saying that this was easily DM's most broken field spell. For starters, Stromberg was handmade by Maximilian Pegasus himself, and he only created a single copy of the card. This was because originally it was just supposed to act as a prototype card while he was designing duel monsters. Let me make one thing very clear here. Golden Castle of Stromberg was never actually intended by Pegasus to be used in tournament play. However, during the Grand Championship arc, major antagonist Siegfried von Schroeder hacked and reprogrammed the card to make it legal. During this process, he also buffed the hell out of this card to stupidly unfair levels. Stromberg has a whopping 7 effects on it, which included complete immunity from all forms of card destruction, an effect that destroyed all your opponent's attacking monsters, plus inflicted burn damage on top of that, because why not at this point, an additional effect that forced all your opponent's monsters to attack yours, and most important of all, the hacked effect that was added by Siegfried that made your opponent pay the maintenance cost of sending half the cards in your deck to the graveyard during each one of your standby phases. So if the damage from Stromberg didn't kill your opponent, decking them out would surely work as a backup plan. Siegfried, you sneaky devil, you. Number 3, Mischief of the Time Goddess. To my knowledge, hands down, this is the most powerful quick play used in duel monsters. Hell, this might be the most powerful quick play spell used in any Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime. Mischief of the Time Goddess is a very simple card because it has just one line of text, but good lord is this thing off the charts. So it states, skip one turn to your turn's battle phase. To me, it's fairly simple, but it might be a little difficult to understand if you didn't see how Siegfried used it in the anime. Essentially, you use Mischief of the Time Goddess at the the end of your battle phase, and the game skips right to your next turn and starts your battle phase all over again. This means you get another free shot of killing your opponent. Also, Time Goddess technically skips to your next turn, so it means that all once per turn effects can be activated again because you're no longer in the same turn. Lastly, you might be shocked to learn that Mischief of the Time Goddess says nothing about the Valkyrie archetype in its text, which means that this card can be ran in basically every deck in the game and could allow any duelist to have a double battle phase in any given turn. Number 2, Card of Sanctity and Card of Demise. I decided to lump these two cards together because they do very similar things, and at their core, they're both cards that allow you to draw an absurd amount of cards. Let's put this into perspective. Pot of Greed is accepted to be one of the best cards in Yu-Gi-Oh history, allowing you to draw 2 cards with no downside. Well, Card of Sanctity allows you to draw 3 times that many, and Card of Demise can give you 5 cards instantly. Each card has laughably low drawbacks in the anime, such as Demise's discard your entire hand during your 5th turn, as if the duel would actually last that long after you've just drawn an entire new hand for free, or Sanctity's clause that lets your opponent draw cards as well. The problem with that drawback is if you just kill them using the 6 cards that you just acquired, it really won't matter how many cards your opponent has in their hand. Any card that lets you single-handedly draw and resolve Exodia is probably going to have to make this list. Honorable mentions include Virus Cannon, Dark Stage, and Slifer the Sky Dragon. Finally, to our number 1, the Winged Dragon of Ra. So if you've ever seen the Battle City arc, then you already know what Merrick Ishtar said was 100% true. The Winged Dragon of Ra is in fact the most powerful of the 3 Egyptian god cards. Based on the anime anyways, all god cards require 3 tributes to summon, but in the anime, Ra actually gained a combined attack and defense of all monsters used for the tribute summon. In addition to the standard, its summon can't be negated, and cards and effects can't be used in response to its summon, Ra also had a built-in Regeki that was far superior to Obelisk. Ra could destroy all monsters your opponent controlled on the field for a mere 1,000 life points rather than tributing 2 monsters. This was super useful because then you could pay the remainder of your life points until you were at 1 to gain even more attack to ensure a swift victory. If you felt that that was too risky, no problem. Ra had other options of gaining insane amounts of attack and defense. For instance, the effect that lets you tribute all other monsters you controlled to increase itself by their attack and defense values. Ra could also negate the effect of anything that targeted it, and none of its effects could ever be negated. So basically, your opponent could never negate Ra in any way, they couldn't respond to its summon, and they couldn't stop its attack from going into orbit. Yep, this was definitely the best Egyptian god card out. So let me know what you guys thought of my list. If there were any cards that you guys thought should have made the list, leave that in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching. As always, subscribe if you have not already, and turn on that notification bell for daily videos.
Behold my great beast! The most powerful of all the Egyptian god monsters!